Happy Tuesday! Welcome to another amazing episode of Go FUD Yourself. JD Gagnon here, my good friend Kiara. What's up?
The world's real excited about America again.
Oh,
Never ending. Today
excited
we're going to talk
or
about
worked up? I don't know.
Maybe worked up. But today we're going to talk about 4 of the crypto bills that are coming out. But did you know that over 50 digital asset bills have been introduced in Congress in the last year? In one calendar year?
Yeah, but none of them matter.
That's just wild, though. I mean, if you think about our taxpayer money and why people might have switched over to crypto, we're going to talk about that. And we have to talk about WorldCoin because there's no other choice.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement about Sam Altman's WorldCoin, but yeah, we'll touch that. What else are we talking about?
If we have time after that, we can talk about BlackRock and we can talk about how the DeFi market cap is shrinking. But I don't know if we'll get through that because there's quite a lot to talk about in 4. We've picked 4 of the key crypto bills.
4. All right. Well, for those of you on Twitter Spaces, we're going to play a little video here pretty quick, so you won't be able to hear it. So just bear with us. Also, quick reminder, it's a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern on all the different platforms.
You haven't been wearing merch.
Like, share, subscribe. I wore merch yesterday.
Yeah, you had Tatum on, but you didn't talk about it. What are you wearing today?
Just a black hoodie. Just a black Nike hoodie.
Someone's got to step up and brand that.
My merch sponsor is Nike today.
All right.
That's what we're doing. All right. Let's freaking go.
All right. People are stoked about WorldCoin.
I don't know why.
I actually don't really know why either. I guess because it's the OpenAI guy, Sam Altman. OpenAI started a crypto. What do you think about WorldCoin? Do you think it matters? I mean, even Vitalik commented on WorldCoin.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that they're using eye scanning, which I think is
biometrics.
Biometrics. I think that's kind of interesting. I've heard some opinions that really don't love that. It's the argument I heard was it's like having your private key tattooed on your back, so people can see it if they know it's there and look for it, and you can't tell if they're looking. And so there's a lot of ways to scan retinas without people knowing. So that will be interesting. I mean, that's just me being a natural skeptic. I think the only reason I'm a little bit not excited about this is they raised an exorbitant amount of money for this project, mainly because, in my opinion, it's Sam Altman. Now, there's probably some value in that. The guy's a freaking genius, obviously, and he's got relationships that are deeper than most, obviously. So I definitely think it's interesting. I'm not that excited for it because they raised a lot of capital at a very high valuation, which to me is always a challenge, pre-product, pre-launch, pre-everything. If you're raising it in the billions or multiple hundreds of millions as a valuation, like that's kind of insane, in my opinion, especially for these market conditions. All of that to say, we've seen some of this before. We saw some of this stuff in 2017 in particular, like the next new ecosystem that's going to change global payments, that's going to be the new reserve currency, that's going to be this, it's going to be that. Enter Tron, EOS, Neo, all of these massive cash sinks that never really turned into anything. I hope this isn't the case with WorldCoin. It'll be interesting to see what they do to avoid fraud, etc., with their retina scanning or eye scanning, whatever it is. We'll see. I mean, it's definitely interesting. It's nice to see some positive narrative for once. People are excited about a project, which is cool. I don't know if that's like coordinated shill or if people are actually excited. I guess we'll find out.
I think enough coordinated shill is what makes people excited, right? Just like the hot summer hit is the one that is played on the radio the most.
Yeah, I mean, they did have 2 million people. I think it was 2 million.
Yeah. So,
2 million
okay,
people,
I
2
get
million
to
people
I
on the
get to be
beta,
the
which
funny
is-
person here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Was that so? First of all, most of their beta testing was done across not exactly the Western world. So a lot of their beta testing was done in small villages in Africa and Indonesia,
Yeah.
and people were paid basically to do that. And I mean, it's great that you can reach out and share the global economy, but at the same time, it also seems a little bit exploitative. The other thing that's interesting is MIT did a technology review, and if you want to read some serious FUD about WorldCoin and its privacy and having your eyeballs scanned, I would highly suggest this MIT technology review. So basically, WorldCoin is claiming to distribute this digital currency. It's claiming to really prioritize privacy.
Go FUD yourself today.
I know.
Why are you being so funny?
I don't like biometrics. Maybe you don't know that about me.
I didn't.
Like I don't have my fingerprint on my phone. I don't like anyone having that shit.
Well, yeah, because you go to jail if that, like, then you'd be connected to all these crimes that you've committed, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sending my DNA into 23andMe. But anyways, they're saying that it's very privacy, but the user experience of these testers was not about privacy at all. In fact, most of them reported that it was like easier for people to, I don't want to say hack, but they didn't feel that privacy was the primary goal here. And some of that, I wonder, like, were they actually testing their privacy? Were they testing their user experience? What were they testing on this kind of like target entry level audience? Or is there actually a really big disjoint? Is there actually a really big gap?
Yeah. I mean, a little bit of insight, I think, on why Africa, why these small, I mean, identification isn't top of mind for all of us, right? We go to the DMV or wherever the registry in Canada, and you renew your license and you've got identification. Getting a passport takes a couple days now, right? And a $50 or whatever it is, it's easy. But so we're not the target geography for this yet until it becomes a hell of a lot more sophisticated. But I mean, in Africa, not just Africa, there's a lot of places of, Europe, Africa, all over the place, that the Middle East, that there's a lot of the global population that does not have an ID. So there's kind of two prevailing narratives for the developed world. One is banking the unbanked, which I think has been overplayed. And now this one is identifying the unidentified. And so, I mean, having ID is a big step, but if that ID is vulnerable to, manipulation or malicious activity, then they're no better off.
One of the big things that I'm funny about, and that is from this MIT technology review, and that is a little bit on crypto Twitter and what have you, is that a lot of this test group was onboarded during like essentially peak pandemic. Not that it impacted everyone the same everywhere, but there was still a lot of job loss, even if you were in a country that wasn't bought into the pandemic narrative. So there was a lot of job loss. People didn't have a lot of money, possibly even less than normal. And so they just, like, it seemed convenient. It was a nice, easy thing to test that they could get paid to do. But a shocking amount of people who participated only had Facebook on their phone. Like, they're not digitally literate. And so to introduce this like digital ID to people who aren't digitally literate just seems like a huge unethical thing.
Well, I mean, most of
like they don't know how to keep themselves safe, right?
Well, a lot of people in those areas, they don't have internet the way that we do on computers, but they do have cell phones. So, I mean, I think like some version of cybersecurity is probably important to them, and I think they maybe have an understanding of like what that looks like, but we'll have to see. I mean, I don't want to spend any more than the first 10 minutes talking about WorldCoin.
I do. I see where you're coming from, and I understand that it's not like everyone who participated is digitally illiterate or something like that. I just think that they didn't pick a group that was going to. It just feels really exploitative the way that they've done this.
Yeah, I will agree with you on that one, in the sense that it feels like instead of trying to convince sophisticated people that their technology really is massively industry shifting, I think, from an ID perspective, I mean, they went the opposite direction. They went to the people that really don't have a meaningful opinion to validate, because from 0 to 1 for them is just ID. We had no ID. Now we have ID.
Yeah. And now on the other side, if you participated in the beta testing and you let them scan your eyeballs and then you participated, they did give you free WorldCoin. So that could also be part of, we could look at it the other way and say like, look, they are bringing people into the new economy. So I don't have to be 100% fuddy on it. But anyways, it's supposed to be available in 24 different countries, and I haven't been able to find a list of those countries, which is also weird to me. But I know that America is not one of them. So.
Are you sure it's not 24? Oh no, it's 35 cities in 20 countries. 35
cities in 20 countries says one article, but then a number of studies say that it's, or another number of other articles say 24 countries. And since I can't find that list, I can't validate which one it is.
All right. Okay. Let's move on to my favorite topic. I am done with WorldCoin.
I like the WorldCoin conversation. I thought we could hang out there. Okay.
That's cool.
We've got crypto bills coming. And yesterday you kind of alluded to how we might talk about this today. Tell me why you think this is so, before we get into it, why is this so important? Why are we talking about it? Especially if we've already seen over 50 digital asset bills in the last year. Like, why does it matter now? What's happening in the news right now?
So, quick caveat. We were supposed to have a blockchain association call this morning, which was for discussion.
Yes.
About the bills that there's some important bills that are coming out of committee today that they might even be public now, but all of that got moved to after the stream today. So I'll give you a little bit right after. And I also can't attend, which is great. But so I'll give you an update tomorrow on that. But I think why 50? What that to me isn't alarming. So anybody in Congress can submit a bill anytime. And the vast majority of them never even make it to comments. They never make it to votes. They never make it to any of that stuff. There's bills introduced all the time for crazy stuff, like censuring people. The amount of bills proposed to impeach different people is kind of alarming. Like that happens, feels like
constantly.
Daily. Yeah. And so the fact that there was 50 crypto bills is I believe some politicking. It's different special interests. Really lobbying their Congress people to just do something. And those Congress people are doing something so that they can appear to be pursuing whatever they think their constituents want. Now, there's probably only, in my opinion, 2 meaningful bills that are coming out. At least ones that have been properly researched from my perspective. The groups really meaningfully do and have spent the time to understand kind of what's happening. They're obviously not experts, but they're fairly well versed. And the first one is the McHenry bill, which is the one that I think is by far the most likely to be ratified through Congress. That's the one we're going to talk about tomorrow. That's the one coming out of both the Ag and the House Financial Services Committee. Ag Committee is the one that oversees the CFTC. House Financial Services oversees SEC. And so there's going to be comments and then markups and then, of course, a vote in the fall on that bill. The other one is
the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act.
Yeah. And then the other one is the Loomis-Gillibrand, which I think I like it more, but I think it's way less likely to actually go through. Loomis-Gillibrand is essentially focusing or trying to focus most assets to the CFTC. Where McHenry's bill has a path for both, but most likely most things will be under SEC jurisdiction. So they're 2 different things. CFTC,
for the record, that one is called the Responsible Financial Innovation Act.
Yeah, and then the only other one that's been proposed that might be interesting is the adaptation of the definition of exchange and what that means and what the requirements are for digital asset exchanges. But I think that's kind of been put on ice right now because of the decision from a federal court, which is precedent, but not super strong precedent yet, on the Ripple case. And so I think we're looking for a more comprehensive bill that covers most of the bases. The McHenry bill is by far the most comprehensive. It's pretty long, actually. I think it's 200 pages. Anyways, all of that to say, I'm excited about this only because I'm sick of waiting. Let's go. Let's figure this out. Let's get the bill out. Having said that, I do appreciate at least the process McHenry's gone through in terms of we've talked to him and many other industry participants have talked to him and their teams and their staffers. And the Blockchain Association is deeply involved in the structures of these bills. We make, from the Blockchain Association, we make suggested changes and whatever, and a lot of it actually happens. So I think the McHenry bill is the most well thought out. It's a lot more restrictive, and there's a lot more compliance obligation for us as protocols, which I'm not super excited about, but is inevitable. So I think, yeah, I just want to put this behind us, at least have some sort of baseline of what regulation
Yeah,
look
well,
like.
I want to jump into all the bills.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, first of all, I want to get a little bit of clarity about the US regulatory going to bills system. I looked into it. Obviously, we learned about this in like junior high. I wanted to verify that what I recall is still correct. So I took a look at it this morning, and JD, maybe we can just walk through this really quick. But like you said, anybody can submit a bill. Like any Congress person can just come forward with a bill at pretty well any time. And then that bill, if it has any sort of response, will go to a committee or a subcommittee. And then that committee or subcommittee are supposed to investigate that bill, and then they will either table it or they will throw it out. And if a bill has been, if it comes across the table, if it's rejected, it can go back to the committee, and then they can bring it to the table again. So bills don't just like, some of the bills that you talk about, like the ones that try to impeach people all the time, some of them just die because they go to a committee and the committee says, yeah, we're not actually dealing with this. But some of them will be iterated on for years and years before they actually end up coming and being voted on. And then when they get voted on, this is the thing that I think is always super weird and interesting, is it's never just that bill. It always ends up being this like mixture of proposals.
I think did we touch on this yesterday?
A little bit, yeah.
So one of the weird things that happens in the US because of the two-party system, for obvious reasons, there's a lot of negotiation. In like very rarely does one party have all three chambers of government in the US, like the Senate, the House, and the presidency. And you need all three, generally speaking, to agree on most things. The president, if you have, there's ways to go around a presidential veto, but it's not that simple. So it's interesting to see how the politicking is done. And it's kind of crappy. Like the McHenry bill or the Loomis-Gillibrand, I refer to them by who proposed them instead of their names, because their names are long acronyms. But anyways, they, I think, are going to be attached to something like the defense spending bill or like all this stuff. And the reason that they do that is because then they have additional political leverage. They can say, oh, so you're going to defund the Department of Defense just because you don't like what's in this crypto bill? Like it's where all, in the US, they call it pork. It's where all the pork projects, that's where they see sunlight, is they get attached by some special interest to these bullshit bills. And you'll get, if it's a Democrat proposed bill, then you'll get a bunch of Republicans saying, okay, I'll vote for it only if you do this or that. Sorry, I had a kid coming in my office here. But anyways, so it'll get attached to this weird shit, and there's kind of nothing you can do about it. I'm hoping that in this case, crypto is the weird shit that just gets approved as a part of a larger bill. But I suspect there's a lot of attention on this right now. So we'll have to see.
Okay, so the first one you already talked about a little bit is the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act. So this one is basically clarifying if it's a security or a commodity, if it should belong to the CFTC or to the SEC. And I think it's a pretty big deal because it doesn't look to me like it's one that's just going to be pinned on the back or piggybacking because of the massive news about it and because of Gensler, but also because it is with the Ag Committee, and that's a pretty substantial, influential, precedent-setting.
Yeah, well, both Ag and financial services, they have a lot of leverage in Congress as committees, and so I think what's interesting here is that there's some collaboration between both parties and multiple committees, as well as like a bunch of. There was a lot of stakeholder feedback in this particular bill, so I think it's interesting. I mean, again, it's very comprehensive, which is good and bad. Good in the sense that ideally we don't have a whole bunch of random question marks with respect to language. A lot of the updates that the Blockchain Association has asked for is actually clarification or more more clear language being used. So just defining certain terms, making sure that, if there's any ambiguity in some of these sentences, sentences being like a sentence of words, not a punishment. But, in some of these sentences, if there's any ambiguity, that leads to litigation problems later, and it leads to enforcement problems. And so they've spent a good amount of time kind of going through that and adjusting. So I guess we'll have to see.
This one's also interesting. It's stated in a couple of different news sources that they believe they'll be able to backdate things. So even if you were declared a security, or even if you have been undergoing some of these legal battles, this will take precedent. So if you were previously shut down for being a security or couldn't operate under fear of scrutiny or anything like that, and then instead you're going to be a commodity, that might allow some projects to revive. Now, I don't know how realistic that is in terms of people actually having the cash to revive a project, but I like the sentiment that surrounds it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm that bullish on that either. I think projects that were charged or sued or shut down or penalized are going to be like, we're out. They're better off to start under a new brand.
Absolutely.
Probably, but.
And then the second one is also the second one that you mentioned, which is the Loomis one. So this is the Responsible Financial Innovation Act. And this is, again, clarifying the roles of the SEC and the CFTC. I wonder if they'll end up on the same bill, because they're kind of similar in those ways.
Similar, but almost opposing. So not opposing, but the McHenry bill is more focused on identifying how you either are a commodity or a security, with most of the focus on the SEC. The vast majority, according to that bill, of assets will be securities in the US. The Loomis-Gillibrand one is a lot more focused on CFTC oversight. There is some language in there, obviously, that identifies what is a security and when, both of which are saying there's nuance. Not everything is a security nor a commodity. I think that when I say that they're opposing, it's one is focused a lot more on CFTC jurisdiction. The other is focused on SEC jurisdiction. Again, if I
know that this one is much shorter, it's only a 69-page read, and it's being touted as bipartisan. So people have already made compromises to be here, and that's kind of an interesting. I like to see that in politics. I like when they've worked it out before they bring it to the table and to the public. Because
and there's no way it's going to get approved without bipartisan support. There's no supermajority.
We always see people just like foddering news about in this way, like trying to get publicity by having their singular party.
Yeah,
and it doesn't work.
It's like when you watch the committee hearings, and instead of asking questions of the people that are being interviewed, they're just making political statements. Like, it drives me insane. Go ahead.
So this bill is supposed to define and designate a lot of different terms, including digital asset, virtual currency, smart contract, digital distributed ledger technology, that kind of thing. So maybe this is that specificity that the Blockchain Association is looking for as well.
Yeah.
And then it also will provide some clarity on taxes. And there's more stuff. You can read the 69 pages if you want, but I just thought it would be interesting to kind of touch on.
Just wait. One of the limitations of that being only 69 pages relative to the McHenry one is one of two things happens if something goes from 69 pages to 200 plus. Either a lot of fluff was put in there, which could be the case, or a lot more clarification was put in there, which I think at this particular point in time, an abundance of clarity would be very welcomed, because all we've had for the last decade has been obscurity and opacity. We just don't know. We have no idea. It's been a lot of guessing. And so the more comprehensive and clear a bill can be, in my opinion, the better. Others might argue against that, saying, let's just take a small step first and then add to it as time goes on. My response to that is, we've seen how long it took to get this first step done. Imagine how long it's going to take for amendments and all of the stuff that could happen. We're talking years and years down the road. So anyways, go ahead. Sorry. Third one.
No, it's good. This next one is the Digital Asset Market Structure Bill. This one's essentially trying to decide when a token is a token. They're trying to decide if it's decentralized or centralized, and this is supposed to define that. I find that these get a little bit repetitive, which is why I wonder how they might be parceled together, or if they're trying to scatter shoot them across many different bills so that something gets passed, because this one doesn't have a particularly unique component to it from the first two, aside from the decentralized part. So I don't know if you have any comments on it, but it's been out for about over a month now, I think. So you can read it.
Yeah, June 1st, I think it came out. I don't have a ton of comments on it. I feel like, full transparency, anything that Maxine Waters is deeply involved in, I immediately don't like, because she's a 100-year-old politician that doesn't seem to know what's going on anymore. All of that being said, I think, you know, what they tried to do here was that first step. That's kind of how I interpret the dams. It's dams, right?
Yeah.
DAMS.
Damsba.
Yeah, dams. And so it's more of like that first kind of half step. It's like, let's just figure out some of the basic definitions. Let's figure out whether you're a commodity or a security based on the definitions that they're proposing. I don't think it's comprehensive enough, and I don't think there's enough support. That's all.
Yep. And then the final one before we go is the Digital Commodity Exchange Act. This is the final one that you were talking about. What's interesting here is that the other three we spoke about have just come out in June or July, so they're quite new. Whereas this one had already gone to committee, it came back with revisions, was denied, and now is being retabled. And so you might see something more thorough. You might see more updates in this one. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this one is almost entirely CFTC focused, which...
That's like good news though, right? Most of these are more CFTC than SEC.
Yeah, but I don't see that actually happening.
Well, we'll have someone else to say, you know, F you to on Fridays.
I would love to see CFTC have jurisdiction here. That the compliance burden is a lot lower. It's, in terms of consumer protection, I think there's still the baseline protections that consumers really want and need. But the cost and the friction to compliance is a lot lower with the CFTC. So I would personally prefer to see that. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think there's too much reliance on the SEC for investment products. And I just think there's a bias. There's a significant bias, especially from the boomer generation, I think, that the SEC is how we protect investments, which I know isn't the case. There's many investments that are under CFTC jurisdiction. Anyways.
So that's 4 out of 50 bills. So don't read about the rest on your own. But I believe that these ones are currently in Congress and being actively reviewed and potentially taken.
Yeah, I think what's one final thought on this one, the DCEA. I think they tried to address some stablecoin regulation also, which is obviously going to be prevalent in all of the bills, but this, I think, was very specific to stablecoin regulation, and more or less has suggested you're not allowed to have algo stables and all of these other things. I don't know if that's been updated now. We'll have to see, but that is an important piece too. That's one thing that I don't see a ton of discussion about in some of the other bills is stablecoins, although I haven't read every page of every bill, of course.
What?
Yeah, who would have thunk? But anyways, yeah, that's where we're at. Okay, I've got a hard stop because I'm doing Into the Club with Dex-a-Lot. So if you're watching this and you're bored, come join us. Come join us into the CLOB. Into the CLOB. I'll be there talking about banking. Ignite. It's fun. There's a DJ. Sir Mix-a-Lot. He does a lot of cool stuff. I think it's Sir Mix-a-Lot. Anyways, live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Like, share, subscribe, and help us share the love. Oh, you I head faked you. And with that, I say to you, Kiara, go find yourself.
Go find yourself.